Oh, all right.
Hello?
Are you there? Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Jordan?
Not too bad.
You coming at us from New Zealand?
That's correct. Are we live or has it already started?
Well, it started. Yeah, I started it because
Okay.
this is only my third live stream,
All
and
right.
I was nervous about the uh like doing a Zoom call and live stream and everything all at once. So I wanted to get it started, and so yes, we're live. I'm sorry. Um,
Absolutely.
you're
All
good.
good. I'm starting my channel. There's so many little kinks and things that you have to work out in order to get things really
Uh,
flowing and to get into a groove. So I've only done one live stream, and the first 5 minutes was a disaster while I scrambled to get everything working. So I understand.
yeah. So I think this is my third. So they said they can't hear you. So let's see.
I just turned up the gain on my microphone. Let me know if that helps.
Oh, okay. So it was on. Okay, it's coming. It's from. All right. They said that's much better.
Okay, cool. So probably what was happening, you had your volume cranked up and I had my gain turned down. So anyhow, cool. There we go.
All right, we're there.
Mischief
Okay.
managed.
So if you guys have questions that you want me to ask Jordan, go ahead and put them in on the stream. I'm going to go ahead and get started with him with just some general questions I have. So first thing is, how did you decide? Do you have a background in this stuff, or are you just a passionate enthusiast around batteries?
Passionate enthusiast. I'm completely unqualified to basically what happened is,
I wouldn't say you're unqualified. I would just say you're self-educated.
yeah, I'll go with that. Um, Last year at the end of the year, there was a lot of hype and speculation about what Tesla is going to do with their batteries. And so I felt like it was a bit shallow, and nobody was looking into research papers, et cetera, to find out what researchers are actually working on. So then I started looking into it, and it just turned into a rabbit hole. And I got into contact with Yvonne from the EV Stock channel because I was researching information. I was trying to get other channels to take the information and use it. But nobody was biting on it except for Yvonne at the EV Stock channel. And he said, you know, you've gathered so much information here, you should just start your own channel. So that's what I did. And
So, so I'm curious. When you your first video is about what, 4 or 5 months ago? Is that right?
yeah, sometime in January, it seems like a couple months ago, but
I feel
yeah,
like you started about the same time I did.
I
So,
think
because
you're right.
I started on the 23rd of January, and I think I saw your first video wasn't very long after that. I want to say it was in maybe March sometime when I saw the first video that came from you. So, um, so um, I'm curious about you at the beginning. One of the things that you did was you talked a lot, and you still do talk a lot about the key researchers. Is it Shirley Meng or
Shirley Meng, yeah.
Shirley Meng and Jeff Don?
Don.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jeff
Jeff
Don.
Don.
So so you focus on a lot of their research because they're the ones that have put out a lot of the research surrounding the batteries. But then she actually reached out and corrected you on something. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. It's been a while since I watched that video. But
Yeah, what happened was is I was just trying to, there's researchers that get mentioned, and Jeff Don and Shirley Meng, they aren't necessarily, both of them are produce a lot of research material, but they're also in the public eye a lot. They're good about getting in front of microphones, or Shirley's good about getting in front of microphones, and she's good at explaining things. And Jeff Dunn has his associations with Tesla, so that's how he's well known. But I wanted to better understand these two characters, so I did deep dives into each one of them. Found out a lot of interesting information on Shirley. Um, I both Jeff and Shirley, I emailed them a copy of the bio that I did on them. I said, hey, if I've
you
screwed
wrote a
this up
bio
in any
on
way,
them. You wrote a
well,
bio on them and then you sent it to them.
Yeah, my videos that I made on them,
Okay. Okay.
which is
Oh, okay.
I
Okay. I
consider
got
as
it.
kind of a bio.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, "Is this correct? Can you let me know?" Jeff Don never responded, but my understanding is he never does to press for the most part. Shirley did respond and said, "Hey, thank you for checking with me."
So, and then didn't she, there was an early, I thought there was a fact that you went through in one of your early videos and she actually corrected you or, um, I can't, how did that happen?
Yeah, that was as a result of me sending her the video. I said, "Hey, could you just make sure I've gotten this correct?" And then after the feedback she gave me, which it's not necessarily that I got it. It's not that I was completely off on a tangent and down the wrong path. It's just that I didn't use clear enough language
Okay.
because the scientific community, they have very specific words for
Okay.
very specific things. If you say particle, well, what type of particle are you talking
Okay.
about,
Okay.
for instance? And I didn't clarify that. I
Okay.
found that this a lot engaging with researchers is some of them are very focused on detail and some of them are go a bit broader. So you kind of have to tune yourself to what they discuss.
I've had a little bit of interaction with academics and it's like they talk in another language and it's really hard to a lot of times get them to speak in a way that non-academics in their field actually can understand it. And I think that's the appeal of your videos is that there's so many of us that are interested in not obviously understanding the inner workings of all the science, but we want to understand more than it's just like it has this many, kilowatt hours and this much energy density and this much. It's like, well, what does that mean? How does that move the company forward? How does that move the industry forward? And so I think that's one of the things that you do really well. And I think, especially I almost wonder if coming at it from the outside isn't an advantage, because you're thinking, how do I make this? How do I explain this to regular folks? It seems like.
Yes, because like most people, when I read these research papers, uh, it's like oil and water. I like you read these research papers and they're written in such a different language and it's so opaque that you can't understand it at all unless you spend about a week going through it, understanding what each word means. So what I'm doing with my videos is I take that really abstract language, look up what all these words to mean, how the concepts fit together. I go, okay, this is how I understand it in plain English.
Yeah, the toilet paper roll is one of the best, one of my favorite videos you did. That was so great, because it's simplified. It's like, oh, okay, I can understand that, and the tabs and all that stuff. Now, I trying to get ready for you being here, I was like watching a bunch of the videos again, and every time I do it, it's like I'm drinking from a fire hose. I'm like, oh my God, I can't keep up with all this. But some of the questions that I know everyone and I'm interested in too is specifically some of the things that are kind of emerged in the last like 30 days with the there's now first Reuters came out with that story referencing CATL and the million mile battery. Then CATL came out and said, hey, we have it. We have the million mile battery and we're ready to make it. And I think there's a lot of, I know some of these things you've touched on, but in terms of, is the CATL million mile battery, in your opinion, the Tesla million mile battery, or is this entirely different? Did CATL come up with something on their own and they're just producing it on their own and that's it? Or do you just not know yet?
I don't know, but I have an educated guess. The million mile battery it can be done a few different ways. Primarily, it has to do with the electrolyte and single crystal cathode.
Mm-hmm.
If they were doing the million mile battery with a Tesla type chemistry, it should have a much higher energy density. But the energy density that they're saying, both S-Volt and CATL, is an energy density of about 240 to 250 watt hours a kilogram. And that indicates to me that they're using a slightly different cathode in the material. And I'm thinking if you go back to my earliest videos, I was talking about a cathode material called lithium nickel manganese oxide, which is
I'll take your word
co
for
it's a
it.
it's a cobalt free chemistry basically.
Okay. Okay.
But in order to get a lot of energy out of it, you have to crank the voltage up. And in order to crank the voltage up, you have to use a special electrolyte, which is really expensive. So in the end, I said, no, I don't think Tesla's going to go with that because that electrolyte's too expensive. And ultimately, it has less energy density. I think that CAT and SVolt have taken that lithium nickel manganese oxide chemistry and they've kept it at a lower voltage so they can use a cheaper electrolyte. And
And that just results in lower energy density.
Lower energy density, but to me, what it looks like to me is there's two ends of the spectrum right now. The two most sort of popular classes of battery are the lithium iron phosphate and Tesla type chemistries, which are high nickel. This chemistry is in between. It's cheap, but it's not super high energy density. It's a nice, what's the word I'm looking for?
But in terms of, but they're actually saying, CATL said they're charging, they can produce it for a 10% premium over existing battery technology. Is that over like, is that over their, like, I don't know what they're comparing that to. Are they comparing that to the batteries that are going into Teslas now in the United States, or the cheaper batteries that are going into the Tesla over in China, the iron phosphate batteries?
That's a good question. I haven't revisited the article to take a look at that, but I'm assuming I would assume that they're referring to, 10 to 15% more than their lithium iron phosphate battery,
Okay.
which would make it cheaper than the Tesla type chemistry.
So really what they appear to be targeting then is maybe something where you're not needing to go extended ranges between charges, but a lot of charging, like maybe like a taxi or something inside of a city that could use a charger several times in the day or something like that. Is that, do you think, what their market is?
Well,
or is it just bragging rights?
No, I think it's what the Chinese do really well in terms of their technology is pragmatism. How can we produce something at an extremely large scale, very cheaply with bulk materials? And I think that's what they're doing with this chemistry because it has less nickel in it and more manganese. And manganese has less power output, but it's a lot cheaper. Now, even if it's only 250 watt hours a kilogram, that's still excellent. And that's pretty much exactly what's in the Model 3 right now. Okay. So they should be able to hit all the current range figures that Tesla is able to hit with all their vehicles, just swap the cells out.
So that obviously is going to be interesting. Then they've sort of hung their shingle now saying they're ready to do this. It's interesting to wonder how quickly they'll be able, what if all of a sudden all these manufacturers that are behind, Tesla are going to line up and go we want in. How long is it going to take on a ramp up to produce at scale? Is it still, I know they do that better in China than probably anywhere else, but.
According to Jeff Don, in a lecture he gave earlier this year, which eventually got taken down, and I'm still not sure why it got taken down. He covered a lot of interesting topics in it. But one of the things he said in that lecture was China is a million miles ahead of us, and basically saying we really need to get a lot more aggressive with battery manufacturing and battery technology because they're dumping lots of time, energy, money, resources into this. And a lot of time, people view Tesla often as ahead on battery technology, but where Tesla is ahead is on like their inverter, their motor, their battery management system. They can use energy very efficiently. But in terms of their battery cells, they're actually middle of the pack. Now, Battery Day might change all that, and I'm hoping it will.
Okay. Is your intuition that what Battery Day would do is put them sort of on par? So your impression is on pure battery technology, that either the Chinese or the Japanese are ahead of Tesla? Is that what your impression is today? Not what we think is going to happen, but today.
In terms of watt hours a kilogram, yes.
And price per watt hour per kilogram?
In terms of price per watt hour per kilogram, my understanding is Tesla is way in the lead.
Oh, really?
You always have to take into consideration quite a few different factors. I think what Jeff Don meant when he said China is miles ahead in terms of battery technology, I think it's because single crystal cathodes are already fully commercialized in China. And for this lithium nickel manganese oxide battery that I'm assuming it is, I'm assuming that'll need a single crystal cathode, and I'm assuming that they have the manufacturing scale and capability there and ready to go. Whereas Tesla, when they release their single crystal cathode on Battery Day, I don't know if it's going to be ready for mass production now or if it's going to be like a year from now.
Because your research is mostly that maybe there's a pilot line either running or close to being running, but that the scale factory is probably going to be, it appears increasingly based on the news today, it's going to be in Austin. Is that kind of what you're thinking, or are you thinking it's going to be somewhere else?
I think their pilot line is going to be in Fremont. And I think it's going to be in Fremont for the reason that me personally, I'd love to see them put this new battery chemistry in the Plaid Model S and X. That
yeah,
wouldn't take a high.
You kind of were theorizing that when you did when you were kind of talking about the constraints, output constraints and the different, and you were speculating that it was you thought that the pilot line would be enough to sort of do, I think it was S and X, and then maybe some leftover for the Semi. Am I remembering that correctly?
You're remembering that correctly. The only tweak I'd make to that now is I've heard a lot of rumors that the Tesla Semi is actually using the old wet slurry technology.
The old, even Panasonic batteries then?
Yeah, at least from what I don't know if there's any credibility to that, but it makes sense because a couple of years ago they said the Semi should be able to hit the numbers that they were saying with existing technology, and since then they would have made some tweaks to the chemistry, so it should be even better.
Okay. So one of the questions, and I don't know if you would know anything about this side of it, but is there a fear or a worry? If you read that Reuters article, it kind of made it sound like Tesla and CATL were sort of collaborating. It almost made it sound like they were collaborating, and that it almost seemed like Tesla was giving them some technology help and they were giving them some manufacturing help, or that was kind of the way that article insinuated it. And the question coming out of that, or whether or not that is the case, is what's the risk of sort of losing any kind of technology advantage by producing it in China?
This is a question that comes up, and I've been thinking about doing a video on it because I think it's a valid concern given considering the history with China and their tendency to borrow technology.
Yeah.
In terms of battery technology, I think China is right on track with what the United States has or other countries have. You can't even say the United States, because the United States, a lot of the good battery research always comes out of the US, and then companies from Korea, Japan, China always take that technology and run with it, because for some reason the United States has decided to outsource a lot of its manufacturing, and we're realizing now what a bad idea that was.
Yeah. Better late than never, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I'm glad to see it's turning around. Elon Musk is saying this. Sandy Monroe is saying this. You have to produce these things in your own country. Otherwise, if you lose that manufacturing backbone in your country, you're not in a good position.
Yeah, yeah. So what you're and I sort of have my impression, my impression of Tesla is its value is the system. It's not just the battery, it's not just the motors, it's not just the software, it's the integration of those things, and where their leadership is on that sort of systems integration side. And yes, on the research as far as the battery goes and the other things, but I think that's one of the things it's the hardest thing to recreate, because you're not just focusing on one particular thing. You're focusing on this entire system approach. And so I am curious, because you mentioned this and Sandy Monroe mentioned this, and I wonder, I don't think you've done any, I maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you've done anything outside of batteries. I don't think you've done anything as far as like the efficiency of the motors or anything like that. Have you?
That's correct. I haven't. And
Have you
it's a
kicked that
big piece of,
around, or is that just is there just too much in batteries for you to go down any of these other avenues?
that's a big piece of it. I still have, I could spend the rest of this year doing batteries and covering all the different aspects of batteries at least. And then on top of that, the new technologies coming out. In terms of electric motors, things like that, there's too many unknowns. And it's,
We need a Jordan Giga of motors.
we do. There is, and my view is there needs to be another person doing what I'm doing, because there's too much to cover. The Department of Energy puts out about 200 pages of summarized battery research every quarter. And that's summarized. So, I mean, if you're just covering a small
and I bet it's
portion of that,
accelerating. It's got to be
yeah.
it's got to be growing. So it's like trying to I talk about drinking from a fire hose, but so let's see here. And why new 3-year Panasonic deal? Is there a new deal? Is there a new deal
Yes.
with Panasonic? When did that
Yes.
happen?
I think they signed the agreement like 3 or 4 days ago, or the agreement was in the news 3 or 4 days ago.
Okay.
And this lines up with my assumption that
Yeah, I remember you said that in one of the videos I listened to today. Your theory was, no, they're not going to abandon their relationship with Panasonic. Doesn't make sense. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like shutting down money printers. People assume that Tesla, if they develop their own cell lines, that they're just going to be a boom scale overnight into multi-gigawatt hours. It's going to take longer than that. I mean, it took several years to get the Giga factory, 2 or 3 years to get it up to its decent amount of scale, and they ran into a lot of different bottlenecks and other issues, getting enough engineers, for instance. The best way to maximize the number of batteries on the market is for Tesla to produce their own OEM Tesla battery cells to go into specific vehicles like a Roadster and the Cybertruck, and continue to produce batteries with Panasonic, also partner with companies like CATL, and get as many companies as possible making batteries for Tesla vehicles. And then, Tesla can just, focus on making vehicles, because batteries have always been the bottleneck.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious. So yeah, you made a great little segue there to talk about the Cybertruck. So do you feel like the stated ranges for the Cybertruck, we're relying on battery day technology in order to give those ranges? Or do you think, is there any optimism to hope that we could see ranges improve from what they put out during the Cybertruck reveal? So 250 on the single motor one.
When I look
especially those, the tri-motor, I think 500 miles, I'm getting a tri-motor and a dual motor, and 500 miles, like, that's plenty. So I don't really think about that, but I do know a lot of the guys getting the single or the dual motor are asking, hey, is there a chance that it could be, 350, etc.?
I don't know off the top of my head how much range each one of those vehicles have. However, I do believe those are minimum numbers, and I don't think it'll be drastically beyond what they've stated in their the marketing information so far. Anytime that you're rolling out a new technology, you have to be conservative, and I think that's what Elon's doing. I see half a dozen different levers that Tesla can pull to increase the performance of those batteries. But the main thing off the bat is to be producing batteries that hit a minimum standard at a large scale. And then after they get the scale down, then they can start tweaking it and improving the chemistry more. So,
yeah. So the one of the things I noticed in the reveal is that, and I went back and looked at all the other reveals, and it's the first time they put ranges with a plus after them. So it was 250 plus, 300 plus, 500 plus were the mileage. And now I thought, well, either they know something, or they just are not telling us something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm optimistic. Yeah, I don't think anybody knows when Battery Day is, and Jordan, unless if Jordan does, then he is the master of getting scoops, and I guarantee if he knew, everyone else would probably know too.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, what do you think about one of the things that's been recently, if you have any thoughts on this, the whole hydrogen thing is recently because of what are they Nikola, because of Nikola's recent kind of crazy emergence into the atmosphere, and all of a sudden hydrogen, which seemed like it was dying a slow and painful death, has suddenly blossomed again on the conversation. Do you have any thoughts on hydrogen as a technology?
I haven't looked into it in depth. My view, taking the personality aside, putting the personality aside that's involved with this, what's his name, Trevor?
Yeah, Trevor Miles.
Yeah. Putting that aside, hydrogen, we need to scale as many technologies as possible if your main focus is to reduce the impact of global warming, because it's going to take a long time before batteries scale to a level where they can cover every niche and every market. So
right.
It definitely doesn't hurt, but in the long term, everything I've heard from researchers, everything I've heard from Elon Musk is that that's not the way to go. Ultimately, batteries are the global optimum, whereas hydrogen fuel cells is kind of a local optimum. They might have some utility for X amount of time, but the real story is with batteries. It's probably
the one thing that even Trevor admitted was that within a 300-mile range, nothing really can compete with batteries. So I actually think that if you can get past his personality, and if you can look at the business model, I can see some ways that it could work just because of the nature of, if you don't have to build a hydrogen infrastructure everywhere, and you literally are just building it, say you're building one station on a very popular route that gets traveled all the time, the dedicated trucks, and you do that with 10 or 12 cases, I can see it potentially making sense if you can get the cost of hydrogen. What he's saying, he can get it down to $4 a kilogram, which is, according to everyone else, like almost insane as far as optimistic. But if you could, I could see that there's an application. I could also see it for like shipping, these where you can't recharge. You have to go across the ocean and you want to replace, where we have diesel electric, everywhere we have diesel electric, like rail cars and shipping. If you could get hydrogen down low enough, I could see it having some utility value in those cases. But it's all predicated on you can't be having to transport it. Like, you have to be able to produce it and use it at scale from a small number of locations, it seems like.
Yes. And everything that he's proposing is so opaque. There's no solid technology. It's like
a shell game, kind of, but
yeah. Yeah. So
but I mean, yeah. So that's, I agree.
As a technology, I support it. I have nothing against it, but it doesn't seem feasible is probably the best way to summarize it.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I've been wondering about a lot with, Cybertruck has an advantage over any other vehicle. Trucks in general have an advantage of pickup trucks in that they have this bed space that would be pretty easy to put another battery in, even if you did it. So one of the things that I keep talking about is being able to rent a battery. You can, I work in the landscaping business, and we rent equipment all the time. We rent tools all the time, and they have all the equipment that could easily pick up a 1,200-pound battery, slide it in the bed, and you could charge it in. Do you see any reason why that technology isn't feasible to do a range extension for, like, let's say a guy had a single motor and he wanted to get some extra range? Is that any reason why that doesn't make sense?
I haven't heard of that before, but I think it's a brilliant idea. There's a word for that. Somebody referred to it as an electric jerry can. Have you heard of that, called something like that before?
Yeah, I've heard people call it like an electric gas can or something of that
Yeah.
nature. Yeah.
I've heard about that for other vehicles, but I haven't heard that phrase used for a couple of years. But for people who have trucks, they often use it long distance hauling for pulling big loads. And I would think that would be a brilliant add-on feature to have. I don't see any reason why it's not feasible.
Yeah. Well, one of the people that I mentioned it in the video I put out today, and someone said, hey, if Tesla is talking about putting solar, a solar option on that tonneau cover, the rolling tonneau cover on the back of the Cybertruck, which granted it only can put in optimally 15 miles a day of range. But the point is, there has to be some mechanism for channeling that energy from the solar panel into the battery. So they said, hey, why couldn't you piggyback onto that? I mean, it seems like they're already integrating potentially that kind of technology. So I just keep thinking about it and thinking, man, it'd be so easy to overcome the range objections for people that do need to occasionally tow. Because a lot of people don't tow all the time. They take their camper on a trip twice a year. And they really just are worried, and you lose about 40 to 60% of your range when you tow. It's the same with gas. It takes about twice the energy whenever you're towing. Depends on the load and the aerodynamics, but that's a range. So yeah, that's something that I keep wondering. This can't seem that hard. Someone said Rivian had a patent for it.
It wouldn't be terribly difficult in my view. I mean, yeah. The one thing I would note, I don't think Tesla would do it right off the bat. I think they would wait a while until they have plenty of excess batteries that they can use for purposes like that. Because if their goal is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, they want as many vehicles on the road as possible. What that would be doing is they could use that battery pack that you're talking about for, another Model 3 or something like that.
Well, they wouldn't have to make it. It doesn't have to be a Tesla battery. It'd be just,
aftermarket.
It would just be they would just have I just want them to have the capacity, because it doesn't have to be. You could even use, say, recycled Tesla batteries as you retire them out, or other EV batteries. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could configure these, but basically you could just put them on palletize them, and then it'd be super easy to slide them in and out of a truck. So anyway, yeah, Tesla wouldn't have to make the battery. I just want them to make the capacity to do it. So I think that's my. Well, I was just curious what you thought about it.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. If nobody's tweeted it to Elon Musk, they should. That would be a killer feature.
Energy man.
He hasn't started responding to my tweets yet. I think
you're not at that level. You're higher than me.
No,
I barely even use Twitter.
I've noticed that there's kind of circles of trust around Elon Musk. I'm not in the inner circle, but I'm just outside of it at this point, where if I really need to get into contact with him, I probably could, but I haven't come up with anything that's that important yet.
We need to get you on the third row.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So Tesla battery shows resistance will be lower, new crystal cathode, and greater heat dissipation. I think you've talked about that in your videos, haven't you?
The crystal cathode and heat dissipation? I don't know if there's any connection.
Is the crystal cathode the same thing as the single layer cathode?
It's single crystal cathode is the word.
Single crystal cathode. Okay.
Yeah.
And didn't you say that reduces heat?
The Maxwell technology does that.
Okay.
Because the Maxwell technology, there's a lot less junk with that wet slurry, so it creates less resistance.
So it's not so much heat dissipation as heat avoidance. It
Exactly.
avoids the heat. It generates less heat. So therefore you can use larger cells, all the things you've talked about, things that you can do when you have that less heat in the battery and that you
Yeah,
have to deal with.
exactly. That's
Okay.
right on. Now, it might also affect the conductivity, but I haven't found any research to that effect.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, it basically means like, say like if you had a whole bunch of plastic in your battery, the battery wouldn't be very conductive and it wouldn't be able to thermally conduct heat very well.
Oh,
But if
thermal
you,
conduction. Okay, I got it.
yeah. So if you had less of that in there, sorry, I should have clarified. If you had less junk material in there, it might conduct heat better as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's see. Oh, well, someone said power walls in the truck, which is what they're saying that we could, but that's what Jordan's saying. We don't want to have to make it dependent on Tesla batteries. But the V to G, you did a video on V to G, and you even kind of, sort of, your feeling was that the Cybertruck was probably going to be, if they were going to do it, that's the vehicle they would probably start with. Kind of
Yeah.
explain why you thought that.
Well, my view is because
Vehicle to grid, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, vehicle, using your vehicle as a battery for the grid. I think everyone knows it, but anyway, sorry.
The reason why I think the Cybertruck would have it is because my understanding from memory is that it has a 220 or 230 volt
Yeah.
output.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you'd have to have one hell of an inverter set up, because I imagine they probably also put like maybe a 40 or 50 amp fuse in that, because I think most 220 to 240 sockets have like a 40 to 50 amp fuse.
Right.
So you could, maybe put out, what is that, 220 to, it'd probably be about 10,000 watts or 10 kilowatts. And if you're at 10 kilowatts, that's that's in the neighborhood of being able to power a house.
Right.
So, I mean, you could either,
you could force it. You could do it. You could, what you're saying is you could do it. What's the word? Like, it's not intended for this use, but you could do it, because now the question is, what is the breaker point on that? Is it really enough, or does it really knock off at whatever 30 amps or whatever? So I don't know. The reason is I don't know. It's not normal to have to run 220 or 240, whatever it is, like, unless you're running a dryer or something. It's like you don't normally use that as an outlet. So just the fact that it's there as an outlet makes you go like, what's the intended purpose of this? Because that's a major, anything you're using that with is a major implement, not something you would normally carry in a truck.
Exactly. It's for heavy duty equipment, that 220 to 240. And at a very minimum, if it has that outlet, then it would be able to power a house if you got, you set up your circuit breaker correctly and things like that. It would be a dumb version of vehicle to home.
Right.
Now, if they've already gone far enough to put that outlet in there, it would only just be a tiny step further in order to allow it to do vehicle to grid, because they already have the software.
So that was, I can't remember. I brought that up early on, and then some people gave me some reasons why maybe that wasn't the right thing, but I don't remember what it was. I just thought, Jiminy Christmas, why do you need an outlet that big? I mean, yes, you have them on generators. That's true. But normally that's because you're going to try and, it's like a 4,500 to 7,000 watt or 7,500 watt or plus generator that you can kind of either run your house, or at least run like your refrigerator and your, everything but your AC. That's why you have those. I don't know any tool that you use at a job site that runs off that. There probably is, but none that I've ever encountered.
Yeah. And now there has been a lot of points like that people have raised with me, but I don't see as technically, I haven't heard of anything that's a real showstopper on it yet. I would understand why maybe a Model 3 or a Model Y wouldn't be able to do it, because it doesn't have that 220 to 240 volt outlet built in, and it might need some extra inverter support there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And on top of
I don't know enough about electrical stuff. So if
yeah,
there's I think the last time it was somebody that told me some of the potential issues that they were actually like electrical engineers. And I was like, I defer to you because I do not know what I'm talking about in this regard. So
yeah, same here. There's I don't know much about it either. There's you have to have switches to protect the linesman, and there's more to it. But I'm hopeful,
yeah.
regardless, even despite my ignorance.
Hey Brian, what larger construction tools? Like a jackhammer? What I'm trying to think of what would run off 230. Um yeah, I've seen compressors, but not ones that you would like bring to. I mean, I've seen compressors at our shop that run off 220, but I haven't seen one like in a welder. Okay, yeah, that's good. Um, let's see what else we have here. The Taycan has an ICE V body on a BEV. Yeah, well, you don't need to be efficient at 150,000 bucks or whatever they are. Let's see here. What do you have you a lot of times people ask me about the practicality of Elon talked about solar wings that could deploy from a
Mhm.
Cybertruck. Do you have any thoughts on the practicality of any kind of, not when you're driving, I know that's not practical, but some, you know, what's the practicality of, like, how much sense does it make to have something like solar wings that you could pop out?
Maybe for a Mars vehicle, it might be a great idea.
Yeah.
But generally, I find Elon focuses on cost benefit quite a lot.
Yeah.
Something developing something like that and its use case is so fringe that my assumption is that Tesla will eventually get to places like that where they're making electric everything and uh, covering what I would consider frivolous projects.
Right, right. Like a quad, like building a quad.
Yeah, yeah, that really surprised me. Um,
Me too.
yeah, because to me that's a frivolous use of
Yeah.
Tesla's engineering talent. But
Maybe he
man,
heard that
oh,
Nikola was doing it, so they were doing a wave runner, so he felt like he needed to. It was maybe a little bit of a smackdown there.
yeah, it was worth it for the shock value. I think. Yeah, it was worth their time.
Yeah. Um, I think that the I would you've said in a number of occasions, and other people have said this too, getting good engineering talent is hard. And so I would think that they've got so much in front of them that is high value that I would go, I could see them more easier tackling a home HVAC system, that high efficiency HVAC system that uses these technologies, the heat pump and the octavalve and some of these other things. To me, that makes more sense than like solar wings, just because I go, well, I could take regular like RV solar panels and just pull them out and prop them up. You know, it's not that hard to do. They make portable
Mhm.
solar. So I do think that's probably, um, you know, we'll see. I could easily see it happening in the aftermarket. I could easily see an aftermarket person coming up with something that once they get their hands on it, that they would, um, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. Now that I think about it, that's probably what's going to happen because
Yeah,
the world of trucks, the aftermarket's huge.
and to your point about the home systems, that makes sense because they're able to leverage Tesla's existing technology
Yeah.
in a quite a straightforward way for that because they're basically taking some components out of their vehicles and putting it into a home.
Well, and
Whereas,
you might also have the solar and the power wall there too.
yeah,
So you
mhm,
might also have kind of a smart home sort of infrastructure in place that you're piggybacking on. So it's, you know, I could easily see them saying, well, we only do this where people have these products because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But, you know,
hmm,
yeah,
yeah, and it fits with Tesla heading the direction of Apple and having a whole ecosystem where you can go all Tesla.
right.
So to me,
Yep.
it's right in line with Tesla's mission.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone talked about a pull behind generator trailer. I don't know. The thing is with a generator, when you're talking generator, you're talking about, you know, you have to have some kind of, you're probably talking fossil fuel or hydrogen. I don't know how you do a generator unless you're using fossil fuel. Let's see. That one. No, I don't see. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Everyone's just telling me all the different things that run from 220. So I agree there are some things out there. I just it's not what most people aren't using them, I don't think. But
well,
I'm not in construction, I'm a landscaper.
I talked to a guy the other day, Chase Drum. He does interviews on Autoline, and he knows some people who would be more familiar with Tesla's technology. And he said the main thing for vehicle to grid is the regulations. It doesn't have to do with the technology. And that's knowledge that he's received from people who work with Tesla or in Tesla. So I'm happy to leave it there because it's above my head as well, but that's the best information I have.
Yeah. Well, I would think that they've already proved their concept with the whatever Hornsdale, I can't remember whatever that thing is in Australia, the battery that they did in Australia, as far as the money saving ability of having batteries replace peakers. So to me, I think I heard someone speculate, maybe now speculating on this, but that the place where they would probably try and compete first were the places that have the highest marginal electricity costs. So like islands and remote areas, just like Western Australia. So I think that what we'll probably see happen with the VTG is that, like you said, technology will be there, but then now you have to contend with utilities and regulators and politics. You're dealing with politics. That's one of the reasons I would say that's one of the reasons why I think it's very, very good that Tesla is going to build a plant in either Oklahoma or Texas, because you get a chance to actually potentially flip two Republican senators to vote for clean energy things. And to me, Texas is the right one, but it would be Texas or Oklahoma. They're like number 1 and 2 in wind. Maybe I live in Kansas. I think Kansas is 3rd or 4th in wind. But as far as like where they see the future, they know this is coming. So I think they're going, okay, yeah, we've been saying global warming doesn't exist forever, but oh, look at the money. Okay, well now there's money involved and jobs and all this other stuff. And so I think if you can flip a couple of red state senators over, all of a sudden a bunch of things that were really hard to do because the Senate's like split 50-50 right now, all of a sudden things can start happening. So that's why I've been very excited about something happening in Texas or Oklahoma, because I think then all of a sudden Tesla has 2 solid red senators that will all of a sudden be proponents of renewable battery technology. That's my pragmatic, whatever, my what's the word, discolored, my politically realistic perspective on American politics. So
I totally agree. That's the way things work. Money greases those wheels big time. Right. You can see it in spending packages, and the way senators vote.
Yep.
I won't get into politics, but there has been research done on it where it's mainly whatever corporations want ends up getting done, and what people vote for politicians to do most often doesn't get done.
Yeah, well, especially if you happen to be bringing thousands and thousands of jobs, it gives you a lot of. I don't see. No one's really asked a question in the last little bit, so I think I think we're done. We're not quite an hour, but we're close. So I think we can. Unless you got anything else to add, any final comments, parting shots?
No. This is pretty relaxed. It's real good. There's been a lot of people recommending that I talk to you for a couple of months now, actually. but I'm finally getting caught up on my channel enough to be able to spend more time building connections with people. So I'm glad you contacted me and had me on.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you on. I appreciate it. I can tell by, I think that's one of those things when you're a YouTuber and you see other YouTubers videos and you know what goes into doing it. And I
Yeah.
would watch your videos and I would just feel like I need a nap. I'm so exhausted just thinking about what he had to do in order to learn this, to put this on here. So I am just, again, it's amazing. I think I love it because I think it speaks to, somebody with taking the initiative and diving in, and it was a niche no one was really exploring, which is, it was awesome. So I'm super glad that you actually replied to me. I'm glad you made time. And you're not native New Zealander, are you? You have no accent.
No, I'm from Ohio.
Okay. I was like,
I moved
you have zero, you sound just like me, like a Midwestern American.
Midwestern.
Oh,
That's it.
yeah. How did you end up in
Yeah.
New Zealand? Job?
Um, when I graduated from university, I lived at home with my parents, and I worked all the way through university because I wanted to graduate with no debt. And so I graduated, and I had cash in the bank as opposed to a mountain load of debt. I said, "All right, well, everybody's been partying the last 4 years. I feel like I've missed out on a few things. I'm going to go do something a little bit crazy." So I decided to go to the other side of as far as I possibly could.
So did
New
Lord of the
Zealand.
Rings play a role in you going to New Zealand or not?
No, I actually made the decision before. Actually, when was the first Lord of the Rings movie?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
2003 maybe?
it was. Oh, it was in the midst of all that. I think I was in New Zealand for the second Lord of the Rings movie. So I knew about New Zealand because my dad wanted to move here when he was younger because he was a meat cutter, and like back in the 70s they needed a lot of meat cutters in New Zealand and Australia. So when I was growing up, he always talked about how he wanted to go to New Zealand. So it was actually that put the idea in my head rather than Lord of the Rings.
Huh. Yeah, well, that's on my bucket list. Especially it would be my bucket list if there was a Cybertruck there, because all I hear about from all the guys down in New Zealand and Australia is how great the off-roading is down there. So,
Mm.
yeah, maybe someday. Do you think you're actually going to be able to make it to Battery Day if the stars align?
It's not looking like it. New Zealand is if I leave New Zealand and come back, I have to go into quarantine at a government site for 2 weeks. It's crazy here. And
Well, they've
there,
kept it pretty low, right? They only have like a couple cases, don't they?
yeah, we actually had it eliminated, but then the health minister was a little bit too lax, so he's probably going to get the axe, and they're putting the military in charge of these
So
quarantines.
it's basically
So,
total shutdown,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah, and then what they're talking about doing is it's costing the New Zealand government millions of dollars to put these people up at these quarantine sites. So they're talking about charging people, which would be like 2 weeks in a hotel is like
Right.
$4,000. So either way, it doesn't look like a good option for me. It's probably best if I just do it from here.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, um, I probably won't be going either if that's any comfort to you.
Well, I potentially have a correspondent, but possibly what we could do, um, we'll see how it pans out. But I'm thinking about,
I mean, aren't you going to stream it? I thought you were going to. You talked about streaming it. If you'll stream it, that would be great. I think it'd be really. Well, I think a lot of people will be on your stream if that's what you decide to do.
yeah,
So
I'm definitely,
I probably will. So depending on what time of the day it is. So
yeah, I'm definitely going to do a stream. But what I'd like to do afterwards is either have a group of people on my channel to discuss it, or hop over to other people's channels and share what I think about it. I think
dude,
it's going to be a
everyone's going to
busy.
be. It's going to be. We're going to be all freaking bonkers. I hope, unless you've
Yeah,
told us everything already and it's all let down. Well, like, Jordan already told us all this stuff, you guys. Maybe that's why they keep postponing it. They're like, yeah, that guy keeps breaking our story. We need to come up with something new.
yeah. I think they have a few tricks up their sleeve, but I sure hope they have some surprises. even if it's just a confirmation of what I've already said, because I feel like I've tried as much as possible to be accurate with my estimates. But to me, it's still unbelievable if those
Yeah,
estimates are true,
yeah,
because
I agree.
man,
The only reason that it would be, the only reason it would be a letdown is because you've done such a good job of explaining what could happen. If anyone's interested in the battery side and they haven't watched you, I don't know. It's hard for me to understand. But if what you've said is actually going to happen, it's remarkable. I would say the only thing that I'm hoping that your pessimism around manufacturing is that they can beat your conservatism around how long you think it's going to take to ramp, how long you think it's going to be to hit those numbers. But I think you're just doing that. You're doing it for the same reason I try and focus on actual, like, real trucks, what they can really do, what journalists have said about the Cybertruck. I really try and focus on that. There's a little speculation, but if you start going off in crazy town, then it's just almost useless. So
yeah. Elon is very good at summarizing information and giving a real good insight into the why of something and the first principles ideas. I think he'll be able to do a better job than I have. But for me, at least, as somebody who's been studying this for a while, what's going to be exciting for me is as soon as they mention something like, say, single crystal cathode or sodium difluorophosphate, I'll go, ooh, I know exactly what they're talking about before they start
you'll be
talking.
one of 12 people in the world that knows what they're talking about. And then we'll all be waiting. What did he mean? We don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hop on your channel afterwards to share my
Vice
thoughts.
versa, but I think you're going to be the one that everyone's interested in. I doubt there's going to be a whole bunch of new Cybertruck information. But anyway, well, thanks for your time, and I really appreciate it. And hopefully this isn't the last time we talk.
Absolutely. I don't think it will be. This was good. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you later, Jordan. Bye.
See ya.